Bonjour. In July 2020, I created a video how to prepare for TEF and TCF Canada exams within 1 year if you are a complete beginner in French. Since then, a lot of things have happened. We started B Barters. We have helped hundreds of students achieve their immigration objectives by learning French. I moved to France. Now I live here in Paris. I call it my home since last 4.5 years. And we learned a lot of things. But most importantly, AI happened. So today we are going to talk about how to prepare for TEF and TCF Canada exams within 8 to 10 months if you are a complete beginner in French. On y va? One might ask, what's the big difference? Because at B Barters, we always used to say that the best case scenario, you can pass these exams, even being a complete beginner, within 12 to 14 months, like, or within a year or so. If you study 3 to 4 hours a day, if quite a few constraints in that. That was always the most optimistic timeline. But nowadays, we are saying at B Barters and quite responsibly that for TEF and TCF Canada exams, even if you start as a complete beginner, you can succeed in 8 to 10 months. The reason behind this is that we have seen quite a few cases, especially in 2025, where student joined us and did pass their exam within 8 to 9 months. And earlier, this used to be an anomaly. This used to be an exception. But now, this is happening a lot, frequently. And we wonder why. And of course, the answer is staring right at us. It's AI, because now you have so much support available in terms of writing corrections, in terms of speaking practices, in terms of generating quizzes. So even though on the whole it seems like what I'm saying now is you can do it in 8 to 10 months, and earlier I was saying you can do it in, let's say, 12 months or 14 months, that really used to be the most optimistic scenario. That was very rare occurrence. But now this 8 to 10 months is increasingly becoming a more realistic scenario. It's not just possible, perhaps it was even before, but now not just it's possible, we are seeing many people actually doing it, and it's not an exceptional case anymore. We started preparing for TEF, TCF back in 2020 when very few institutes were specifically working in this area. So we have a lot of data points with us over the years. We have to acknowledge that AI has made life much easier for TEF and TCF aspirants. And I can talk about its impact in very concrete terms, how and where you can use it, right? One of the simplest and most efficient usage, I would say, is writing corrections. Back in the day, in 2018, 2019, when I was preparing for the exam or learning French, I was pretty much reliant on teachers to do my corrections. And it's not that easy. You also want a good teacher. You don't want any teacher, right? Just for the sake of it. Because there are a lot of people who teach French just because they have DELF B2 certifications. You will find a ton of them in most of the language institutes that are running as a business. You want a teacher who is well versed in French to correct your assignments or to give you corrections, right? So that was one big challenge. It was difficult to find a teacher who would correct 10s and 15s of your essays. Of course, they have limited time and all that thing, right? So that was one of the reasons that I did not practice writing a lot, because I did not have a means to get my stuff corrected in a very detailed manner with a lot of feedback, right? Now, right from the get-go, you can start writing. Even if you're at level A1 or A2, you can get small paragraphs corrected from AI. It's better than most of the teachers that you can find. So that's a big impact. Now you have absolutely no reason not to practice your writing. You can practice as much as you want. You have corrections available 24/7. You don't need to wait for anybody. You don't need to ask anybody. You can just go and get it corrected. Another thing, of course, I have to mention is you can do much more reading and listening practices using tools like Gemini or better version of ChatGPT or other LLMs. You can ask them to generate reading quizzes, paragraphs, even listening quizzes they can generate for you. And the third important, and perhaps as important as writing, you also get some help or substantial help for speaking practice with AI. Again, this is one area where perhaps AI has a lot more scope for improvement as of today, and perhaps it will never be perfect. Nonetheless, there are options now that were not there before. Earlier, let's say a couple of years ago, we would just advise our students to find a study partner. It wasn't possible for teachers to take the practices year along because, of course, you're not at that level to be able to practice, you need certain amount of study under your belt to be fluent and to practice, right? So it was very difficult to arrange practices at different levels for different people in their rhythm, in their way, right? Nowadays, you have apps like TalkPal, other applications, perhaps as good as TalkPal or even better than TalkPal, and you can do your own research. They allow you to practice speaking as soon as, let's say, 4 or 5 months into your learning journey. If you have studied with a lot of discipline and consistency for 5 6 months, you have enough vocabulary and enough grammar foundation that you can install these applications substantially more cheaper than physical teachers, right? And again, another thing is availability. When you engage with live teachers, there's a schedule problem. You will have to adjust to the schedule of the batches or the schedule of the teacher, and you'll have to pay them by hour. It's so much constraining. Whereas this application, you can practice at whatever time, 2 a.m. in the morning, whenever you have time, always at your disposition. Again, is it perfect as of today? Perhaps not. But is it better than not doing practice? Exponentially much better than not doing any practice. We used to talk about study partner, right? And I did that when I was a student learning French. Without study partners, I would not have succeeded. However, it was quite difficult to find good study partners, right? I had to spend enormous amount of energy and effort, go through multiple people. Sometimes there was a problem of motivation, problem of consistency, problem of punctuality, problem of level, problem of so many problems, right? It was very difficult. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Like, everyone perhaps is not that much extrovert to go out and engage with so many people and ready to have bad experiences and still keep trying, right? So as of today in 2026, as a primary line of practice, I strongly recommend using AI apps like TalkPal or some other apps. Do your research, try them out. The amount of feedback and level of feedback they're going to give is not going to be as comprehensive as, let's say, if you're practicing with me in a session conducted by me. Of course, that is there. But still, the big advantage is that you can practice. There is somebody who is going to speak back to you. There is something that's going to understand what you're saying, even if you have a slightly heavier accent. And more importantly, they generate the subtitles or the text from what you speak. So in case it's making a lot of mistakes in generating a text, that is a clue for you that you have certain room for improvement when it comes to pronunciation or other things. I mean, this feels like one slide, 3 points, but it makes enormous amount of difference, because historically speaking, the two of the toughest parts of the exam are speaking and writing. Those are the real test of your language proficiency. So that is particularly where AI has made enormous amount of difference in terms of availability, how much it is available to you 24/7 at fraction of a cost of that, of being engaging with a live teacher or physical teacher all the time. That's going to cost much more. This is the single most important factor that has resulted in people are succeeding in exams much quicker and with much more greater numbers. So now what we propose is a timeline which is more like 8 to 10 months, starting from scratch. Let's say you're a beginner in French and you want to succeed. Your target is to get CLB, or in French we call it as NCLC, 7 score in either TEF or TCF Canada exam, right? And you don't know much French. You're a beginner in French. So you still need to learn the language. So you cannot immediately go to the exam preparation. Of course, you need a language. So what we propose now is 1 month you must spend in pronunciation. Pronunciation itself is a quite important topic. It has a lot of patterns, it has a lot of exceptions, liaison, and all these things are new in the beginning, right? So you should definitely spend at least a month in practicing and mastering, trying to master your pronunciation and the way you can read out loud French language. That's super important, because that will shape your ability to understand or comprehend the language. If you are able to speak it out loud correctly, pronunciation wise, your brain will be able to understand it later when you start practicing listening. The better your pronunciation, the more correct your pronunciations are, the easier it is for you to then understand what other people are saying in French. Okay, so when I say basic vocab, I'm talking about you can spend time on Duolingo, You can go through some basic grammar topics like articles and numbers. And so basically, in this particular time, you're just getting acquainted with the language. But focus remains on pronunciation. By the end of 1 month, you should be able to read out loud French correctly. Right now, you're not in a position to understand everything because you don't have the vocabulary level, you don't know the grammar completely, and you're not confident in French, of course, because you're just 1 month into your journey. But you have to master the pronunciation part. It's important to just invest in passive learning as well in this 1 month. What do I mean by passive learning? Listen to songs, French songs. Watch some movies, French movies. Now, why? It's not about you're going to learn grammar or vocabulary from this, right? The point is to get acquainted with the language, even fall in love with the language if it's possible. It's not a mandatory thing, but if you can, this is the time you want to do it. You really want to like the language, because more you like the language, more easier it's going to be for you to succeed in this 8 to 10 months timeline. Okay, so that's your first month. Now, immediately after that, you can do the grammar as we always do at BBARTES, right? In our flagship French learning program, I would say dedicate 3 months, up to 3 months. It can be quicker than that, but up to 3 months to complete the French grammar. Now, when we say grammar, it doesn't mean just grammar, because when you are learning grammar, you automatically build vocab, right? With every example in a grammar exercise or every example that you read or study, you're already having the other elements of the language like words, adjectives, connectors, stuff like that. So your vocab is getting built as you're learning the grammar, right? So it's not a grammar you don't study in isolation, but it's best to learn it at a stretch, in a stretch, because it builds on top of each other, right? So we at BBARTES, we really specialize in this particular part. What we have done for you is we have created this new resource that you guys are aware, I guess, a new book called as Practical French Grammar. So what we realized over the period of time is that perhaps you don't need to master at least all of the grammar topics, right? Because there are other bigger fishes to fry. So now we have presented you with this particular resource that is available to you in your program classroom when you join our program. That has reduced the grammar to 150 pages. Right? This is all the grammar that you essentially need to score NCLC 7 or CLB 7 level score in your exam. Again, just like the language, the scope of grammar itself is very vast, very huge. You can study for 6 months, you can study for 1 year, you can continue studying it for 2 years as well. And perhaps some people also do PhD in French grammar. But that is not the goal here. Goal here is to study or learn the grammar that you need as a foundation for you to be able to get CLB 7 or NCLC 7. So we are now aligning our program that you're part of, where we define how much grammar you need bare minimum. If you want to study more than that, of course, it's your call always. This is the bare minimum amount of grammar that you need to succeed in the exam. And that should take, in ideal case, about 3 months from start to finish, right? And that's why our program is self-driven program. So it's important to understand that how much time you need to complete this bare minimum grammar, it depends on you. When I say on you, how much time you can dedicate, how much practice you can make, simple as that. So there is no reason for you, ideally, to take more than 3 months to complete this bare minimum amount of grammar. So that's the second stage. And now, as you are near the completion of this stage, we still recommend passing 3 more months in textbooks. So we recommend Edito A1, A2, and Edito B1. We don't recommend Edito B2 because that's not required. Edito B1 itself is a very high level textbook. It contains most of the vocabulary that you need of the B2 level as well. This you can do it in 1.5 months, and this book will take time. It's much more comprehensive book. It's up to you, but 3 months should be enough to study these 3 particular textbooks. You can substitute these textbooks with some other textbooks, like there are so many textbooks, but I have always enjoyed Edito a lot. But up to you. This doesn't have to be Edito. It can be other textbook as well. Like even the publisher is same, Didier France. Up to you. Now, what's the advantage of studying these books? These books usually have exercises for reading, listening, speaking, and writing. So they cover all the 4 sections of the exam. And these books are level based, right? So A1 will be much easier. So you don't have to quickly jump to immediately high level exercises and then get lost, feel overwhelmed, or make so many mistakes that you are scared, right? So you should definitely start by A1, reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Now with AI, you can obviously complete your writing exercises, getting checked with AI. Also practice the exercises of speaking with a TalkPal application or your study partner, whatever is convenient for you. And reading and listening answers are always given in the book. So this is complete book. Another good news about these books, as I mentioned several times in my lectures, they categorize the units based on certain themes. So you learn the vocabulary in context. That's the best way to learn vocab, putting it in some theme or context. And then for this theme, this is my vocab. Okay, and that's what Edito facilitates. So this is a very, very good way of applying the language. So what you were doing in the first 4 months essentially was acquiring the basics of the language with the grammar and the pronunciation. But this is the part in this next 3 months, you apply the language. And now with the help of AI, you have active support all along the way while you're applying. So we are 1 month, 3 months, and 3 months. You are 7 months into it. And let's assume that you have completed your B1 book. You are supposed to now start focusing on the skill building. And this should take 1 or 2 months. What do I mean by skill building? Even though you have done these books, you have learned the grammar, you still need to focus on speaking, particularly speaking, because that's the toughest of all, and writing. At the same time, now is also the time that you can start doing more reading and listening quizzes. But the 1 or 2 months that you need extra after completing grammar and books is particular attention on speaking and writing, because it takes time. Speaking, the only way to develop it is by repeating, doing it many times, going through the uncomfortable process of doing it many times. That's where I always say, and I say this so many times, a lot of students get carried away by correction part. I need somebody to correct my stuff. Most important part is doing things, practicing things. Of course, I'm not saying it is not important to correct. You need somebody to correct, whether it's AI or a teacher. Okay. For speaking, it's better to have a teacher as well, because speaking is still where AI is not going to give you very detailed and comprehensive feedback. But nonetheless, correction is one big part, but the most important part is practicing things. If you do not practice, you're never going to succeed. So this 1 or 2 months, you're going to specifically target speaking and writing as much as you can. Like you can put a number. I want to do 40 exercises in speaking and 50 exercises in writing. Based on exam, TCF or TEF, I'm going to do 20 section A and let's say 30 section B, or for TCF, activity 1, 2, 3. However, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of planning, but this 1 or 2 months, you're going to just try to focus and develop your speaking and writing. It doesn't mean that you're not going to do reading or listening, of course, but this two require more attention than the other two. And then when you're at this point, let's say of 8 months into your journey, if you have done all the things that we talked about, so you can design your milestones, right? It's not just about spending time. If you haven't done much and you have reached 8 months mark, doesn't mean much. So all of these steps that I'm talking about, you can define milestones. Here's a clear milestone. I should be able to read French correctly after 1 month. I should be able to develop interest in French. I should be able to have some basic vocabulary from Duolingo. Those are your milestones for first month. Then your milestones are, okay, I need to be able to study completely this minimum 150-page grammar from Practical French Grammar Resource at Viva and I should have done X amount of exercises. This is very easy to understand how to achieve this milestone because you have that defined clearly well in our program. Next milestone itself is also very easy. If you complete Edito A1, that's a milestone. If you complete each unit of Edito A1 or A2, that itself is a milestone. So you have this milestone clearly defined. And then this, you can also define a milestone that I need to do X number of speaking practices of section A, X number of speaking practices of section B, or in case of TCF, exercise 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So that's also a milestone that you can define. Same goes for reading and listening practices. So after we come here, after 8 months into your journey, and having ticked off most of the milestones, if not all, then we strongly advise you to give the first attempt of the exam. Now we will have separate discussion about which exam to give, and I'll definitely conduct those sessions soon. Having said that, on a broader level, both exams are at a similar level of difficulty. There could be some differences here and there, but generic conclusion is one exam is not necessarily too much easier than other exam. So it's not going to make a lot of difference that, let's say your French level is A2, and just because you give one particular exam instead of others, you're going to get NCLC 7 score in that. That's not going to happen. But nonetheless, there are differences in speaking and writing, especially. So we're going to discuss that in a separate discussion. And you can do your research, your own research as well. And then at this point, you can decide which exam perhaps you want to attempt. So you give your first attempt, right? At the 8 months mark. Now, there are two outcomes possible. One, you did your 8 months journey in such a perfect manner and you spent like 4 hours per day every day for 8 months or 9 months, and you come with the best possible preparation, and it is highly likely with the help of AI and all the AI impact that we discussed earlier, that you are able to get the successful result in terms of like CLB or NCLC 7 score in your first attempt. It is possible. However, the more likely scenario is that you will get CLB 6 or maybe even 5 in one or two, either speaking or writing or listening. Other sections you will get 7 or even more, but perhaps in one of those, speaking, writing, or listening, you will get CLB 6 or CLB 5 even. That's still a good news, because now you're familiar with the exam, you know exactly where you fell short with the result, and nowadays you get result within a week. In fact, so much so, I have had a situation where students got the results within 2-3 days after giving exam. So let's say for a broader sense, within a week you get your result after giving the exam. So let's say you fall a bit short in one or two sections, right? In that case, you can again go back and prepare for 1 to 2 months, and you give your attempt number 2, right? And then what we have seen in last year or so, or even last 24 months, if you want to say, most students get the desired result in attempt number 2. And this happens around 9 to 10 months mark. So this is your new possible timeline. It is still a best case scenario. I'm not saying everybody is going to be able to meet this timeline. That's totally fine. Life is not always ideal. We don't have all the conditions in life that allow us to achieve what we want in the ideal way. Of course, there are other complexities in life, I understand. Also, there are other things like language aptitude. That's another thing that can really define your timeline. Some people are quite good at language aptitude, some not that good. So that obviously takes more time for them. There's memory. So there are quite a few other factors, small factors as well. But I will again, at the risk of repeating myself 100 times, this one factor has changed a lot of things. As of today, in end of January or February 2026, never been easier to learn a new language. The only reason that you will not learn a language now with AI in the mix is if you don't want to learn it or if you give up. If you really want to learn it, if you like the language, and if you have a strong, concrete reason to get it done, you will get it done with the help of AI. So this is the new timeline. One last thing that I'm going to talk about. There's no denial that AI is playing a huge role in facilitating your learning journey and incrementing disproportionately your chances of succeeding in the exam. But at the same time, role of human factor. Let's also discuss very quickly. So we still have very important role of human factors. When I say human factors, you have necessarily two things. You have a teacher and you have a study partner. Those are the two roles that I can imagine. Those are very important, right?